All right. Well, hello, everybody. We are on our 50th, 50th virtual wine tasting. And this time around, we're actually doing something a little bit out of the ordinary, which is sherries. Now, sherries are kind of an interesting kind of take on wine, um, mostly because, well, um, let's kind of just go into, well, what is a sherry? Or what is sherry? And it's much like port. It's a fortified wine, meaning that they add alcohol to it, and that it comes from a very specific area. Um, so if you look here in Spain, it's way down here in the south. So it's pretty much on like the tip where it's almost meeting Africa. Now I can get you a little better picture here of like what that sherry uh, place kind of looks like. Now, and again, instead of off the coast of Portugal, like port, now we're off the southern coast of Spain. Now, sherry gets its name from this area called uh, Jerez de la Frontera, which kind of means like on the frontier. But Jerez, well, then the French get involved, and all of a sudden you get the pronunciation Xeriz. And that's why you actually see all three like names on the bottles. So Xeriz, and then all of a sudden the French, or not the French, but the English Anglinize it and that interpretation, and we get sherry. So Spanish to French to English. And that's how you get all three. So being that far south, go back here. So, what's going on here? Sorry, for some reason the presentation all of a sudden went a little fatty wampus. Now, as you kind of see there, that's the oh yeah, again, Jerez, Xeriz, sherry. Now, so okay, now into the second part, which is well, now we start to look at the terroir. What makes sherry sherry, and this area is known as kind of like a Mediterranean area, meaning it's very hot and dry. And what makes this area able to grow grapes well is its soil called albaritza. Alba meaning white. And the reason it's white is that it has high amounts of chalk, as you can kind of see from the ground there. The strange property to so much chalk in the soil is that it both drains really well, but it also retains water. The retaining is key because, again, this is a dry, hot area, and it does that by, when it gets the occasional rain, it starts to kind of like muddy that area, that chalk starts to seep down, but that kind of muddied uh, chalk that's on the top, well, it then all of a sudden gets hit by the sun right afterwards, and it gets almost like a sealed shell, trapping all of that water underneath. So, that's what the plants now have to, kind of live on when they're, they probably should die. Um, Now, within this area, you have two sets of grapes. One is the Palomino, and the other is Pedro Ximenez. Now, Palomino is like the main primary grape. So three of the wines that we have here, or three of the four, are going to be made from Palomino. That's where we're going to kind of focus. And as you kind of see in the picture, it's a very high yield grape. meaning that there's not a lot of practice done in limiting the harvest to increase quality. So what really makes, sherry significant in the world? Well, one is this variable like decision tree. And you start off with like, you take the Palomino wine or Palomino grape, ferment it, and depending on, like almost its properties, how good it is, pretty much, sometimes it's just splitting the same batch. You go down either the biological aging, which you see there as like floor protection, or the oxidative route, which is the no floor protection. Now remember that word, floor, F-L-O-R. We'll like for each of the wines, we'll be coming back to this table. But just note there's those two main paths for what this wine will take. Now, the second thing that really makes Solera, and it is something that you had kind of, we'll talk about the non-vintage here in a bit, but yeah, that second factor is this Solera aging method. Now, what they do is they take from that bottom row, that's Solera, and that is what gets sent off into, to be bottled. Then they go one rack up, which is that first criadera, and they pull about a third, well, for the Solera, again, each of these times they're taking about a third. Sometimes it's a quarter, but up to a third. And, and what they'll do is for that first criadera is then fill up whatever was, taken from the bottom Solera. And now it kind of gets mixed in. So that's why, and it keeps going up, giving to the row below it until you have the fresh batch called a Nanya or an Yad. And, sometimes there's 4 rows like you see here. Other times there's 2. And sometimes there's, upwards of like 6 or 8. It really all depends on, what the quality that the producer is going for. You find this method in other places, like Champagne is really big into, kind of filling things from below. And that's when also you get like non-vintage Champagne, because there will be, some of the older in the new. Now, and, you could actually, get molecules of wine from 20 years ago, along with the stuff from, say, 3 years ago. So, not to really, go into everything, let's go ahead and try our first wine of the night, which is our Fino sherry. And you can kind of see from the screen there, we're going to be on that floor protection side. Now, Fino sherry is the biological aging for it. And here they take the dry wine. What's not shown there is that they fortify it up to 15%. Remember that's one of those key things that for like exams is on the biological side, they can only go up to 15% fortification. And they fill the barrels almost full. What happens is that a native yeast that's around there will start to kind of form on the top, and it creates this weird crust. I don't know if you can really kind of see in that picture, but there's that kind of white line that's above the, above that yellow and orange. That is like a cake of yeast. And what that does is that yeast, much almost like kind of like Brettanomyces, consumes alcohol and oxygen. But what it does, because it has that kind of cake there, it protects the sherry below from oxidation. And again, this yeast layer is called floor. Now, something also to kind of note, because it's going to be a pattern as we go through the rest of these, is that you can actually find something out in some markets called cream pale sherry. And what this is they take this Fino sherry that's gone through this biologic aging, and they blend it with some of the Pedro Ximenez wine that we'll be tasting at the end. And what that does is it kind of gives it a bit of a sweetness to it. So let's go ahead and try our Fino. Now, as you can kind of look at this, to me, it has a slight, I would say that's on the pale gold side. And let's go ahead and give it a swirl and a sniff and see what we get on the nose. These are going to be very odd and different from many of the wines we've had.
It doesn't have the complexity of some of the.
The complexity of what?
Sounds like alcohol.
I get honey.
It doesn't have as many complex flavors as most wines. As you said, it's very different from the wines. It's got a very strong kind of alcohol base and then maybe a sweeter base, but it doesn't have as many volatiles. It doesn't have any different smells you usually get from the wines.
Okay.
Let's get leather.
A lot of acetone.
So no.
I'm getting acetone, leather, and honey.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I wouldn't expect any leather from this, because usually that's a sign of like some type of oxidative process.
Not getting leather either.
Well, I'm wearing lederhosen, so I could just wear my pants. To be honest.
It's true story.
The faintest hint of raisin.
Yeah. I could definitely see like a white raisin. Well, let's give it a taste before I then show the slide of what we should be detecting off of this. So. But it definitely tastes a little different from how it smells.
Well, if anything, the smell was very strong, and the taste is almost the opposite. It doesn't really have a lot of strong flavor. At least the one we have.
Well,
Very strong flavor.
the Palomino grape is not really known
Open in that acetone.
in like really strong or complex flavors. It's more about that like how it gets aged.
Many people can do
That's so
that.
But
Okay, it's okay with the shrimp. Actually, the shrimp calms it down quite a bit.
so
Something. I touched the bruschetta thing. Helps a lot. It's like a salt.
but here's what we should be smelling and tasting off of a Fino, which is citrus, some yeast, salt, like a salinity, a bit of herbs, like goat bread, which kind of goes into the yeast, and then almonds. And that's what I really smelled with this, was, you know, almost like a Marconi almond.
9, 9, 9, 9.
Must be huge. So
She's
you have to
a Swiss dom.
Gonna
She's
say,
gonna speak German.
so speak whatever language Kurt speaks to, but
And me too.
Anyone, after seeing that little list, did anyone?
Kind of get that dough, and maybe I think that's maybe what Rob was saying when he had the leather. It's kind of got that like a wet dough, like a
It's
freshly
I can.
Like- freshly made.
Yeah,
like sur la vie that you're going to get off of like a champagne, you know, where it's using that autolysis of, you know, champagne yeast to produce those bready notes. This, you know, it's got that just like weird, you know, like funky yeast on the top that gives it, I don't know, it's definitely an odd flavor that kind of goes to what Corey is saying, that it's somewhat more butterscotch than, you know, like an actual yeast. But you know, when you're in Spain, this dry is what is typically served with like tapas, especially a lot of your fattier meats. That's what you're going to, that's what it apparently really pairs well with. That's mostly because, you know, it's kind of just a really clean wine, but it also has that amount of alcohol to strip away all that, you know, fat that's on your tongue and leave you kind of refreshed. But let's go ahead and try it with a couple of things out here and see if I don't know, I'm actually hoping that some of this sopressata is really going to make it pop. Now I've had a couple of sherries in the past, but you know, this is well, and on the you know, the WSET3 exam, you kind of have to know like this whole process, which is, you know, it was like of all fortified wines, you know, this one has like the most breadth of like, but then they don't give me any questions.
So one quick question while we're so you had the pyramid, of course, when you were showing things going into the bottle, but technically from a amount of bottle of grape wine, the pyramid is actually the other way around, right? There's more wine at the top.
And there is that, you know, yes, it would be kind of like an inverted pyramid, you know, just but only by like maybe 1 to 2 barrels in terms of, you know, like that capture or, you know, just taking into account evaporation.
That was going to be my next question. So there is some evaporation that goes in, I assume, because like everything else evaporates.
I mean, you saw how, you know, how far south it is in which means it, you know, it's, what was it, like 19 to 22 degrees centigrade, which is, you know, upwards of like 80, 90 degrees that the stuff is stored in. So it has a lot of, I don't know, almost like heat flex going on throughout. You know, it's much in the same way as like a bourbon barrel, where, you know, as it heats, that wine is kind of like pressing out into the wood, and then when it kind of cools down, it kind of pulls back in.
The angel share and the angel share is what they call it in bourbon, right? So yeah.
All right. Well, if we're ready for the next, our next is our Amontillado. Now, as you can kind of see from, you know, where it is in this whole process, you're essentially taking Fino, which is that, you know, biologically aged, but now you're kind of taking away that protective floor and letting it age more with like oxygen. And so you get this like sort of biologic, sort of oxidative outcome. And, you know, that this was kind of like a very odd wine, just because it's not like where they took oxidative and they took biologic, you know, aged, and they mixed them. No, you can only go one way. You can only go, you know, you age it through the biologic, and then you you know, go into an actual like oxidative aging. So let's go ahead and give this a pour. Already you can see the color change due to that oxidation. So looking at this, I mean, this is right into, I'd put this at like a pale amber. And it's, I want to say it's getting, it has some like distinct brown notes. Not like the South Park brown note, but just brown notes. So let's go ahead and give this one a swirl and a sniff and see what we get on this.
Raisins.
But stronger than last time. And there's not that strong alcohol smell. I mean, it's still, you still tell there's a lot of alcohol in it just on the nose, but it's not, doesn't have that
It's not
high
the-
percentage alcohol
It's not the opening.
of the smell. It's not, you know, it doesn't have that same high proportion of.
This is a 60, what was that?
See now this, okay, so Corey's getting a lot more of the caramel butterscotch on the nose. So like, to me, this smells a lot more like, you know, like honey.
Yes. But there's still about, I agree on that, the honey, but there is also a butteriness to it. There's a
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, you know, it's much like, you know, well, again, because when we started off with Fino, which already should have that kind of like sort of yeasty, you know, somewhat doughy, buttery, and now all of a sudden, you know, you're just adding like oxidative age to it.
It's ironic, Richard. You know, I'm a home brewer,
Mhm.
and when I was making my own beers, if I opened up one of my beers and it smelled like this, it was generally meant it was bad. There was too much oxidation, and it was going to be that rum raisin, you know, fruit bomb sort of beer that wasn't really beer anymore.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is, I mean, me, you know, because of that oxidation, I get a lot more nuttiness to this. So this is, you know, much more in the like roasted almond. But I still get that same like citrus note to it. You know, it's less than the Fino.
Yeah, there's a little bit of astringency to it, citrus or whatever. What the type of barrels do they use?
What was that?
What type of barrels are they using? Are they just like new oak, or do you have any? I mean, because the barrel will sometimes impart flavor to the.
These, I'm pretty sure that, you know, because of that Solera method, they're not switching out barrels. So these are like effectively neutral oak. Like they shouldn't be imparting very much, you know, in those terms.
Except for the 20-year-old molecules that they're imparting, I guess.
So the like, you know, an Amontillado and the next one, the Oloroso, those casks are like highly sought after by bourbon makers. So, oh, let's give it a taste. Cheers. Huh. Well, it definitely has that oxidative, like kind of like weird tang to it. Yeah, it's the same thing that you would get on like a tawny port. Where it's like, I don't know, it's sort of this like weird coppery, like almost like buzzing feeling on your tongue.
but not as sweet as a port.
Oh, no. No. Oh, and one of the other things to mention with an Amontillado is this, when they blend it with Pedro Ximenez, becomes what they call a medium. So if you ever look for a bottle that says Amontillado medium, or it just says medium sherry, it is Amontillado with Pedro Ximenez in it. And you, like I said, you're gonna see this weird theme throughout, like all of these, where they're just throwing in like that big sugar bomb to, and then calling it like something different. But this I would think is going to go well with, a lot of like cured meats, but I would also think they would go well with, much like pork, that you would want like a salty cheese, kind of like like a Danish blue, or even a Roquefort. Now I hadn't prepared the tasty notes for this one, so we're gonna have to go. We're doing this one blind. But again, with that, but now this, again, remember, is also, it should be around that same 15%, at least I would think. That,
What do we got at 16.5?
yeah, this one's actually 18.5, which is very interesting, because I didn't realize that they then fortified more in order to like oxidative age it. But let's see how it goes with the salty. Let's go with the salty almonds. Now the other thing about sherries is that they're kind of meant as like an aperitif, like something to stimulate the stomach, before you feed it a whole bunch of food. But that's also why it's kind of served with like little plate tapas, and again, stimulate your stomach for an actual meal. All right. So let's move on to third wine of the night, which is our Oloroso sherry. Now, as you can kind of see here, we're over on the right side of the of this whole kind of decision tree, and this is going to have it's going to be aged in the absence of flora. So again, in an oxidative way. And what's kind of cool is that it starts with a selection of like they're usually more heavy and like full structured must or like grape juice than a Fino. And usually it's done that they do like their press of the wine, and that gets taken off and made into Fino. Then they essentially do like a second press where it's like all the way down, like all those like heavy elements that are in the rest of that wine. That's what all of a sudden gets kind of sent over onto this oxidative side. Now what it is so here now, because it doesn't have that floor protection, well, they can also kind of go sky's the limit on fortification. It's got to be done at least up to 17%. So remember, floor side, the max you can do is 15%. That's because the yeast that's making that floor protection will die if you have it over that. This, on the other hand, 17 to start, but it can be all the way up to 22%. So when you're looking for like really boozy sherry, you're looking for Oloroso. Now, and but what happens is that the heat will also evaporate from the wine, and that actually concentrates it even more. So this what I'm hoping to see is that it's going to be much even comparatively to the Oloroso or to the Amontillado, is that it's going to be a much heavier, thicker wine. Now, as you kind of see at the bottom, for both sides, with aging, there's that VOS, VORS. That VORS denotes very old rare sherry. So, normally, they're not really, classified as that, but if you actually see that on a bottle, that that's like, kind of like cream of the crop. They really wanted to make this into, something that is, to be enjoyed for a very particular price point. So let's go ahead and give our Oloroso a pour. This I'd say is definitely much more into the, actually I wouldn't quite call it, I'd say it's about the same color. That same kind of like coppery amber color. But
I mean, we may have a slightly different, or may have had a different one for you for the last one. It's about as dark, but this is definitely redder for us. This is definitely it's the same depth of color, but this is a redder version of what we had last time. So,
red. Okay. So let's go ahead and give this a swirl and a sniff. So what are we detecting on this?
I'm seeing on this one basically the same as the last one on steroids. It's more rum, more raisin, a little more alcohol too.
Yeah, I mean, well, it'll definitely have more alcohol. The raisins, yeah, that would be kind of like that dried fruits. It's much more nutty. So the other, like the last one was kind of like a roasted almond. This, it's much, I want to say woody, but well, so I'll share out what should be detected in this, which is dried fruit, walnuts. So that's kind of what I was getting off of it. Are you getting any like balsamic? Oh, I'm not sure if I'm,
I won't say anything.
but I am getting, like that leather note to it. So let's go ahead and give this thing a try. Cheers. Ooh, that is coming in hot. But in a lot of ways, so it has a very long like finish to it. It just kind of sits there on my tongue. But in terms of like its like depth of complexity, I would actually probably say that the Amontillado had was more complex than this one was.
I would agree with that. This is This has got stronger flavors, but the Amontillado had more interesting flavors.
Yeah. Now, so, and again, this Oloroso, when you mix it with Pedro Ximenez, what's kind of odd is that it can be classified as either a medium sherry or a cream sherry. So that's the key, is cream. You know, and really that between medium and cream depends on the sugar content that's being added. So, you know, if it's like a 50-50 mix of Pedro Ximenez and Oloroso, it's probably more medium, but if there's actually more, then it becomes cream. But, you know, so for those of you that have actually bought, you know, a bottle of cream sherry before, thinking that you're getting a creamy cream sherry, well, the joke's on you. It was actually given that name by a woman who essentially declared that after tasting the sweetened sherry, that if that is milk, then this is cream. And the nickname just kind of stuck.
I have to say, I'm very surprised that this sherry isn't sweeter because it smells like it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that has to do with because of that extra oxidative aging, that it really makes those fruit notes become like dried fruit notes, which most of the time on your nose, you know, you're gonna be like, oh, well, dried fruit equates to all that sugar that was in the fruit now concentrated down. Now, is there anything that you're trying with this? I mean, considering it's supposed to have truffle, I'm actually hoping that some of this truffle Gouda that I have is really going to pair well with. Yeah, that really brought out that kind of like, just, I don't know, like weird tang. So definitely find something with like a truffle flavor with the Oloroso, and it might be an experience you can't forget. So, last but not least, is our Pedro Ximenez. Now, this is a bit of a different grape than the first two. Well, because, well, I mean, it is a different grape. Now this one, it's picked either very, very late, or it's sun-dried, kind of like in this picture, like Amarone in Italy. It's then pressed and fermented, but because the huge amounts of sugar that's in it, it'll stop fermenting, leaving behind something that's also really super sweet. And then they'll actually, well, again, just like with sherry, they will fortify it up to some percentage. I think at least for this Osborne, it is at, what is it at? 17%. So it's both, it should be both sugary and boozy at the same time. So much like your ports. Wow, that is some thickness. But after they, you know, really go into, you know, the Palomino grape, which is a white grape, that this one is so red and dark. And as we're kind of looking at, wow, this almost looks biologically aged as well. I'm not sure about anyone else's, but this almost looks brown.
Yeah, it's soy sauce colored or molasses colored. It is dark.
That is wonderful.
So let's go ahead and give it a swirl and sniff, and let me know what notes you get on the nose.
I'm gonna
Molasses,
hold
very
your-
strong.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is dates.
Yeah,
You wanna,
I'm not sure if I can really smell much else beyond just like, I mean, yeah.
We just put paella on the table, so it's a little difficult to tell with the the paella. But I get a little bit of saltiness. I think a little bit of salt or something on the back end of the wine as well. Just
it's really,
like a
it's really.
a
good.
briny, just
You know,
undertone of like a brine or something like that.
I was actually thinking that same thing. It's almost like fish.
Mhm.
That could be the paella.
Fish. Well, let's go ahead and give it a try, and let's see what we got.
And
Really lovely.
Oh, that is unctuous.
We need to come back to this when we have dessert, though, I think. You were too quick for us tonight.
I definitely get date on these.
Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely tastes like date as well.
It's
definitely.
beautiful.
Or figs, I guess. Yeah, figs.
figs, dates,
Yeah.
yummy, sweet, sticky
Mm.
fruit.
Serve yourself so I can serve myself.
Go ahead.
Let's go.
Yeah, so raisins, dates, dried figs, maybe a little bit of spices and some chocolate. Wow. Yeah, that is treacly. But this is what actually Pedro Ximenez is what really kind of got me interested in like exploring the sherry world. But wow, I mean, just the way that it sticks to the glass. It when you swirl it around, it sits up there and it just claws its way down in like huge furrows. But for those of you with it, if you ever want to, experience a either pale cream, medium, or cream sherry, well, you have the other three wines here to mix with it and experience it for yourself.
So we don't not only wine tasting, but we get recipes out of it this time too.
Yeah. little do it yourself. So that'd be like multiplied. So you essentially get, out of 4 wines, you get actually 7 wines. Or should I say 7 potential wines? But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and close the recording out. So say goodbye to YouTube. See you.